really appreciate everyone being here. It really is an important issue for all people in Ohio. And I especially appreciate every one of the people who's been so kind to participate on this panel to really help discuss these issues, have a very educational discourse and reasonable debate surrounding these issues. Everybody up here on this panel is for ending prohibition of marijuana. And this isn't going to be a debate about whether or not marijuana should be legalized. This is a debate and a discussion as to whether or not issue 3 and in conjunction issue 2 are good enough for Ohioans. This is a discussion of, are we ready right now to end marijuana prohibition with the bill that's been proposed? Or do we wait an indefinite period of time to hope for something that many people believe would be better? But before we get started on this discussion, I'd like to just kind of introduce the forum with a little animated video that kind of describes why prohibition itself is so destructive for so many people. So I hope you enjoy this little film, and then after that we're going to get right into our discussion, our presentations from our panelists, and we'll let people keep coming on in for the next few minutes here. This is called The War on Drug Abuse. So that video really, to me, sums up a lot of what Students for Sensible Drug Policy stands for. We're a student-led organization that has chapters all over the world, and we truly aim to end the war on drugs as a way to end prohibition itself, because prohibition, just like we saw with alcohol, fuels crime and violence. So we aim to end prohibition. We aim to educate our peers and our community responsibly about substances. We aim to reduce the harms of all substances as much as possible, and we aim to really connect the community with activism towards ending this war on drugs. And this is an excellent way to do that. So again, thank you all for being here. I think we're actually just going to go ahead and get right into it. So each of our panelists is going to have about 5 to 6 minutes to present their case, their argument, and then we're going to follow that after each panelist has presented with a community-driven question and answer session. And it's going to be in a little bit different format than most people might be used to, but I think it's going to be very, very helpful for this specific discussion. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first panelist, and he's actually the author of issue 3. Chris Stock is the Chief Executive Officer of the State of High Group, a consulting firm specializing in advising public and private entities on complex policy and regulatory matters. In this capacity, Chris served as the principal drafter of the Issue 3 Amendment and has advised the Responsible Ohio campaign on drug policy reform and other public policy issues. While not engaged in public policy consulting, Chris is a partner at the Cincinnati law firm of Markovitz, Stock, and DeMarco. His practice focuses primarily on securities and antitrust litigation. Chris served as a judicial law clerk for the Ohio Supreme Court Justice Terrence O'Donnell, and Chris also served as both Deputy First Assistant Attorney General and Deputy State Solicitor for the Ohio Attorney General, Jim Petro. In these positions, Chris was principal counsel to the Attorney General on a wide variety of legal and policy-oriented issues, including numerous constitutional and regulatory matters arising from state agencies, boards, and commissions. Prior to his service in state government, Chris was an attorney at a 500-lawyer nationally recognized law firm. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Stock. Oh yeah, just be sure. sides of feedback.
Well, thanks everybody. I appreciate the introduction, and Zeph and SSDP, I really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you guys on what everyone agrees in here is an issue of, what the Supreme Court would say, great general and public interest, right? Raise your hand if you are 20 years old or younger. Anybody in here? Yeah, we're getting a fair amount. I can't raise my hand. I wish I could. If I could, I wouldn't be in here right now. I'd probably be at the bar, so congrats to you guys being in here. If you are 20 years or younger, you are approximately the same age as the first bill that went into the Ohio General Assembly to legalize some form of marijuana. Now, year over year, in those last 20 years, that same bill or version of it has been introduced before the General Assembly in Ohio. And each time, that bill hasn't made it out of committee. It hasn't received a single hearing. So we know we can't trust the General Assembly with legalization issues. In those same 20 years, we've had a number of efforts by some very well-intentioned people, some people that have their hearts in the right place, but for whatever reason, and we can talk about those reasons, haven't been able to put the issue before the voters. 20 years. Let me be clear from the outset that issue 3 gives all of us, gives Ohio voters, gives Ohioans the first opportunity to legalize, regulate, and tax marijuana for personal and medical use. It's the first time. Now, I'm going to break a cardinal rule. I hate notes. I'm not a note person. But before we get into this debate, before we get into this discussion, I spent a little bit of time before I drove over here and made a list of exactly what issue 3 does. And I'd like to share that list with you in the 6 minutes that I have allotted. Issue 3 allows Ohioans to use marijuana without the fear of being criminally prosecuted. It allows epileptic children and seniors with Alzheimer's or Parkinson's to access the medicine that will help them manage their seizures or help them with the chronic pain associated with their diseases, sicknesses. Issue 3 will stop the madness of African Americans being targeted and convicted for simple possession offenses at a rate of 4 to 1 over their white counterparts, and eliminating the consequences, the collateral consequences of those actions. Issue 3 will end the failed war on marijuana that's costing Ohio $120 million a year. War on drugs. Issue 3 will develop a safe and responsible framework around a market that's currently controlled by drug dealers, right? Issue 3 will create nearly 35,000 jobs, and that's not me talking. That is an independent task force report that was done that I can share with you. Issue 3 will create more than $550 million in tax revenues for our local communities for things like cops and firefighters and road and bridge repair and other economic development initiatives. The locals will get that money, not the state, the locals. Issue 3 allows all Ohioans 21 and over to grow marijuana in the privacy of their own homes. Issue 3 allows Ohioans 21 and over to own and operate retail marijuana stores to sell marijuana, marijuana-infused products, and marijuana accessories. It allows Ohioans to own and operate manufacturing and processing facilities to make edibles, ointments, tinctures for the market. It allows Ohioans to own and operate medical dispensaries. If you want to be a medical dispensary and provide for the sickest Ohioans among us, that's what Issue 3 allows you to do. Issue 3 allows you to own a research and testing facility and be part of the compliance apparatus that will no doubt spring up around this regulated industry. Issue 3 will allow Ohioans access to the 10 grow facilities to grow marijuana commercially through those 10 facilities. And Issue 3 will make Ohio the absolute epicenter of the marijuana reform movement nationally. Now, what you're going to hear from these guys here, well-meaning guys, is that Issue 3 creates a monopoly. It creates a monopoly. It creates a monopoly. But what you won't hear, I bet my bottom dollar that you won't hear during this entire debate a single word to dispute what it is that I just said. Because that's what Issue 3 does. Issue 3 allows all of that, and it's black and white. Okay? So, we'll have our discussion about monopolies, and it'll be robust and it'll be spirited. And I can tell you that it's not a monopoly, and we'll get into that. I can tell you that any lawyer who knows how to spell antitrust knows that this is a monopoly. But monopoly or not, take them at their word. Monopoly or not, this will legalize marijuana for everyone in this room. Monopoly or not, this will help sick children get the medicine they need. Monopoly or not, this will create 35,000 jobs and $550 million in tax revenue. Monopoly or not. And so, what I'd like to, in opening, is to have you remember that as these folks come up here and take issue with various aspects of Issue 3, they won't be able to take issue with those because that's the truth. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much to the SSDP for hosting this event. Thank you all for coming and being interested in citizen issues in the state of Ohio. What you're going to hear is exactly what he told me you're not going to hear. You're going to hear a lot of rebuttals against the points that he made. Issue 3 is the marijuana legalization amendment. Issue 3 seeks to legalize marijuana for those 21 and older, or for those who have debilitating medical conditions that qualify with a doctor's referral. And what Issue 3 also does is immediately monopolizes the market to 10 investor-owned grow sites that are called manufacturing, or marijuana growth, cultivation, and extraction facilities. Right? They will monopolize both the cultivation and the extraction, the manufacturing, the making of edibles, making of concentrated oils, all of which will have to happen at each of these 10 sites. So to state that you can own and operate your own manufacturing business is a bit of a misnomer, and that needs to be clarified. Issue 3 has a very poorly structured medical marijuana program. The funding of this medical marijuana program is not even mandated in the amendment. This is an elective option for the anti-marijuana governor-appointed commission that Issue 3 grants all of this power to. They're not mandating that patients get immediate funding for medicine. And when we look at other states that take ResponsibleOhio's model of limiting cultivation to a few sites, whether it's 2 or 10, it's limiting it. Patients are unable to afford the medicine that comes out of it. And if we're going to follow that model, but we're also going to restrict patients by effectively not allowing them to afford the medicine and not allowing the funding to go to the patients that need it, they're going to fall through the cracks. They're not going to be able to afford the medicine. We just saw this in the state of Minnesota. Once more, this provision does not include anything in regards to industrial hemp for farmers. Absolutely nothing. That's a no-brainer for marijuana legalization. The United States of America is the #1 importer of industrial hemp. Yet there is literally nothing in this amendment for people, for farmers, for small businesses, for entrepreneurs. The lack of industrial hemp, the lack of funding for the medical marijuana program, the shell of a home grow program that does not even give a time frame for the release of applications, nor does it specify the qualifications of this application. All of that's left to the anti-marijuana governor-appointed commission. This is a poorly written, poorly structured amendment. All it seeks to do is to get all of the power around this product. And we watched a video where the king made it illegal. And bad things happened. We all agree on that. And then we saw the king make it legal again. And everyone was relatively happy, going about their lives without the impediment to prohibition. But what the king didn't do was say, you can only get it from me now. Now I'm the guy. Now I'm the dragon. That's what issue 3 seeks to do. We are urging you to vote no, to hold off until next year, and to also put pressure on your local legislators. Something that issue 3, Responsible Ohio representatives seem to slough off as being ineffective for the state of Ohio. And that very well may be so, but it is our duty as citizens to fix that now. We don't have much time on this. We have wolves at our gates, ready to write any piece of an amendment that confers them special interests. There are other groups out there, like Legalize Ohio's 2016.org, that have a beautiful amendment with a free market approach, and they are approved for the ballot for 2016. In the time it's going to take Responsible Ohio to build these facilities, to hire these people, to train these people, to get everything going and work out the kinks. As far as I'm concerned, I don't know if any of these investors or owners or even funders have any idea how to grow this plant efficiently enough so that 10 sites produce for the entire state of Ohio. I'm not confident in that. Neither should you. For a moment, I'll talk about issue 2. Issue 2 is a very simple, very comprehensive amendment that would seek to stop this from happening in the future. If you want to get a monopoly in the state of Ohio, if issue 2 passes, there's a way to do it. You can even still use the citizen initiative process, but there has to be another line item that points out to people that this is either a monopoly, an oligopoly, cartel, or confers a special tax rate that's not available to other equally situated persons or entities. It makes this fair, it gives us protection, because the state constitution is not a business plan. It's not a place to play monopoly. And we can argue about the definition of monopoly, but even if you take the economics definition of a single seller, despite it being 10 investors, there is one single seller, and that is Responsible Ohio. It's a monopoly. When you get into the details, it's an oligopoly, but they're all under that umbrella. So I hope that you all take your time, read through the amendment, go to againstallroad.org and find an annotated first portion to make it easier for you, and make up your minds on your own on November 3rd. Thanks.
Thank you. Sharing views. Our next presenter is going to be Howard Rahtz. Howard Rahtz, after graduating from UC, worked in the addictions field for nearly 20 years, including 10 years as director of the Addictions Services Council of Cincinnati. At age 42, Rahtz joined the Cincinnati Police Department, serving as commander of the police academy and head of the SWAT hostage negotiations team. He retired in 2007. He's the author of 3 books on policing with a 4th, Race, Riots, and the Police, due out early next year. He's one of only a handful of people to work on the drug problem from both the law enforcement and treatment sides of the issue. Ladies and gentlemen, Howard Rahtz.
Thanks, guys. Good evening.
Good evening.
One of the things he didn't mention in the introduction is I finished my career as head of the Cincinnati Vice Squad, and I'm always happy to look around and not see anybody that I recognize. Second thing, I appreciate the tenor of the conversation that we're having tonight. I was, as everybody in this room likely knows, a face on TV about Responsible Ohio, and as a result of that, I've got a lot of feedback, and not all of it positive. One day I get a call from a guy anonymous, of course, who tells me I'm a jackass. The next day I get an email from a guy who tells me I'm immoral, and a week later I met a guy who called me an immoral jackass, so that was the trifecta. I need to say that I am not associated with Responsible Ohio and other as a spokesperson. I'm not getting any money. I don't have any financial skin in the game at all, but I believe this is the right thing to do. I was listening to the radio last week, and one of our most notable critics, public official in the state of Ohio, was being interviewed, and he said he had just gone to Denver, talked to a couple cops, and they disagreed with that retired Cincinnati guy that was on TV. And he went on to say these cops told him that the legalization in Colorado hadn't had a big impact on the black market. Well, one of the things I know about cops is that they hate two things: the way things are and change. So, going and talking to a couple of cops isn't my job. And in fact, I've heard from a lot of police officers. I talk to them almost every day, and they tell me they agree with me 100% on this. So anyway, this guy's on the radio, and he says, you know, no, black market hasn't been impacted. Well, last year in Colorado, first year of legalization, $700 million in legal marijuana sales. Well, where did that money go? It went to farmers, truck drivers, dispensaries, retail employees. Not a single penny of that went to the drug cartels. And that's always been my interest in this, is doing something about the violence associated with the cartels. He went on to say that this couple of cops in his scientific survey told him they were still doing a lot of drug work, and that the lack of arrest had not, because I said in one of my ads that cops would have time to focus on real crime. And he said, no, that's not the case. 37,000 arrests in Colorado the year before legalization. A marijuana arrest under the best of circumstances is a significant impact on policing court time, multiplied by 25,000 or so in Ohio would be a significant savings. Last week, last Tuesday, there was a Democratic national debate. And this is the issue that really kind of drives me a little bit crazy about this, is the hypocrisy. And midway in the debates, and I'm sure some of you were watching, Anderson Cooper, the moderator, says, we're not going to have a question on marijuana legalization for the panel, most of whom have smoked marijuana. And people in the audience laughed, and he goes, and most of the people in the audience have smoked marijuana. And then he corrected himself, says, no, probably all the people in the audience have smoked marijuana. Well, the question to those candidates should have been, do you support arresting American citizens for behavior that you yourself indulged in? And nobody had the guts to ask that question. On Responsible Ohio's proposal, and Chris mentioned, now 20 years we've been at this. I haven't been at it that long. I've been at it a number of years. I've worked with groups that are trying to get this thing accomplished. Nobody has moved this thing forward a single inch. And now we have the chance to accomplish this. And let's talk about a couple of things that did not happen in Colorado. No kids were killed trying to buy marijuana in the illegal market. There were no home invasion robberies of marijuana dealers where people were shot. So we have the choice, and to vote no on this is to make a choice, not for something that's going to happen in the future, something unknown, but we're voting to continue the status quo. If we continue to have violence around drug issues, marijuana sales, we continue to have people arrested, so we have a chance to make a change in that, and we can hold out all the promises we want, but now we have the opportunity to do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Rahtz. Up next is John Sheil. Now, John is a lawyer and a former congressional candidate and a principled public policy advocate. He also has no economic interest in issue 3 whatsoever. nor does he work for any competing group. He represents his ideas and his ideas alone. Now, as a traffic lawyer, I can speak from experience, he can speak from experience, having represented a large number of marijuana users in the professional interests in their occasional brushes with the criminal justice system. His position will focus on economic inclusion and the fact that Ohio's Constitution should not be amended lightly. And also should not be used to protect an anti-competitive business model in the new marijuana economy. If you want a link to his Facebook page, please send people to your friend, which you can introduce. Everybody, John Sheil.
I think there's a typo in there. I think what he meant to say was that I'm an entertainment lawyer. I do a lot of entertainment work. And as an entertainer myself, over the years, a lot of the entertainers that I work with have intimate knowledge of marijuana. I've smoked marijuana. There's a lot of people in here who have. One thing, though, that you're going to want to know about is that all of the folks that are here who are under 21, this doesn't really apply to you. So that's the first thing I have to take issue with Mr. Stock's statements. It really doesn't apply to you. And there are competing ballot proposals, and Mr. Weaver mentioned one of them that's already been approved for next year that would reduce the legal age to 18. So I encourage all of you who are under 21, there was a bunch of people who raised your hands, and I encourage you to do your homework and look and see because this isn't going to affect you this year anyway. But you need to do your homework, because really the reason why I'm here is I'm looking out at the future. I'm looking out at what's best for Ohio. And I have the unenviable position of agreeing with a lot of the folks on this side of the panel, but yet having a principled opposition to the way that they're going about it. So I'm going to present a bit of a nuanced argument, which is a little tough for folks to swallow. It's definitely not something easy to dive in and say, well, I agree with this, but I don't agree with that. It makes it hard to have sound bites. I'm not about sound bites. When I ran for public office, that was one of the worst things about my campaign. We really didn't have any sound bites. We wanted things to be better in government, and that's what I'm still arguing for here today. So my position, although I don't speak for any organized group, really echoes the Ohio State Bar Association's feelings on this. It came out with a statement just a few days ago that says, we don't believe that a constitutional amendment should be written this way. We believe that the Constitution of Ohio is a sacred pact between citizens and the state. We don't bills, get 300,000 signatures, hire a bunch of great lawyers to write great words that protect their business model, and then insert that into the Ohio Constitution. Now, when I first spoke publicly about this at the Democratic Forum down at the Woodward Theater, I happened to have the coincidental, it was just purely coincidence. The Pope spoke to Congress, and he was speaking on the topic of economic inclusion. And that, if I could borrow some of his phrases, really is what we're here about. It's why I'm here. It's why I'm speaking to you today. Because I don't believe that issue 3 is about economic inclusion. Now, they can talk about the available licenses and the retail stores, 1,000 of them that could be brought in, but they don't talk about the fact that we've already been through Prohibition in this country, and we've already come out of Prohibition in this country, and we've already found that limiting the people that can brew beer or make wine is not really a productive model. Right now, the license to brew 31 million barrels of beer in the state of Ohio costs you $3,906. Okay? To grow marijuana, if the anti-marijuana governor and the 7-member commission, after 4 years, determines that there's enough demand to increase the number of grow licenses, if we meet all those hurdles, right, and after the Responsible Ohio folks have their way with the market for the next 4 years and reap millions and millions of dollars worth of profits, we will have a situation where if there's enough demand, you could pay $50,000 to have a grow license yourself. Maybe. That's not economic inclusion. Now, if you talk about the cost of the other licenses, we're talking about equally high numbers. Vastly above the $3,000 to brew 31 million barrels of beer. Okay? We're talking about $20,000 a license, $25,000 a license These licenses are not cheap. That creates a barrier to entry for anyone who, like me, doesn't have a whole lot of money to put in to create a new business model in this new marijuana economy. So all of you who are under 21, you need to look at this very closely, because some of you may be looking at what can I do to participate in this new marijuana world, right? Colorado has already pulled in more money in taxes from marijuana growth than from alcohol. So we see that it's lucrative. Now, should we let all those profits go to the folks who paid $40 million into an investment group here to get the word out and allow them all of the profits? Or should we allow everyone to compete in the marketplace? Should we lower the cost of entry to, say, $500 for a small retail shop? Or even $3,000, or even $5,000? I'm okay with having a reasonable plan. And I like the fact that Responsible Ohio is here, because all the other reasonable plans are learning how it's done. And they're learning that you need to be organized, that you do need to have people out there with t-shirts and with handbills, and you need to be pressing this issue. But right now in this country, we have 23 states, plus the District of Columbia, that have already moved in favor of marijuana. Now, those 23 states in the District of Columbia are in direct conflict with the federal law, the 1970 Controlled Substances Act, that puts marijuana in the Schedule I category. All right? We have a Congress in this country that is listening to all of you. Now, our Ohio legislature is not very responsive, but I encourage you to go out and vote and change their minds. Elect people that will believe in this. Elect your congressmen who will vote for this. All right? Just because 20 years in the past 20 years wasn't successful doesn't mean that we aren't almost at that tipping point where we have more states in favor of marijuana than those against. So it's time in this country to stand up, vote for what you believe in, and vote for economic inclusion for everyone, not just a handful of investors who've put a lot of money in and want to reap all the profits. It's up to you. So do your homework. Come ask me questions afterwards. I'm happy to talk about this at length until the day we vote. Thanks very much.
Ohioans to end prohibition. For organizational efforts in Hamilton County brought approximately 70% of the valid signatures needed to certify the Cannabis Control Amendment. She remains a member of the Miami Valley Normal. Most recently, she has been honored to accept a position on the advisory committee to the Patient Ombudsman, a patient advocate for the ICI, the International Cannabinoid Institute Research Facility. Everybody, Amy Wolfinbarger.
Hi, I'm not a public speaker, so you might hear a little bit of shakiness in my voice. I'm here today on behalf of the patients of Ohio. Initially, when RA came out, I was not happy with their amendment either. I felt that it was pretty biased. I felt that, sorry about that. I did feel that Responsible Ohio's initiative was pretty biased. As a small business owner myself, I did believe that it would be hard for small business to make it in the market under their amendment. As Zeph pointed out, I have done many years work in cannabis reform. I'm your activist. I'm your person that has been standing in the street corners for years for all the other medical marijuana initiatives that have been out there that are just sitting there. These initiatives lack the funding to make it to ballot. The Ohio Rahtz Group, we've been working for 3 years. Heart and soul's behind us. God love everybody within that group. We could not get the funding to get it done. 3 years in, we're sitting at about 150,000 signatures. No idea how many of those are valid or not. ORG will not be making ballot next year. Additionally, as Zeph pointed out, I did organize the Hamilton County effort for Ohioans and Prohibition Now, Legalize Ohio 2016. I know what it's like to work in a grassroots campaign. I know what it's like as a patient with chronic pain to stand on a street corner all day with a petition in my hand asking the citizens of Ohio for their signatures. It sounds like an easy task. Everybody thinks, oh, 305,000 signatures, everybody loves weed. That's no problem. Well, you know what? It's difficult. If it was easy, we would not be standing here today. Additionally, Legalize Ohio 2016, it is fair to say that they have an initiative that exists. It is not fair to stand here and tell everyone within this audience that that initiative is going to be on next year's ballot. We would like to hear total signatures collected so far, available funding. The last report to the Secretary of State wasn't looking too promising for the pocketbook of Legalize Ohio 2016. As far as lobbying the State House is gone, patients have done this for years. There are patients that are sitting before us in this audience. We've been there. We've done that. Our legislators are not listening. Our elected officials are failing us. It is not fair to withhold life-saving medication from these patients one more minute. They failed us. There have been bills, as Chris said, that's been introduced that sit there and they go nowhere and they just die. Our legislation is not interested in passing any kind of a common sense medical marijuana bill, much less a recreational bill for our state. We probably would not be sitting here today discussing whether or not Responsible Ohio is a monopoly if our officials have acted. And now they choose to act. But they're not enacting a common sense medical marijuana bill to give us a reason to vote no for Responsible Ohio. They enacted Issue 2. Issue 2 is a direct assault on the citizens' initiative. Any true activist in the state of Ohio that can get behind a bill that is going to take rights away from the citizens and give whatever little power it may be to the government should be ashamed of themselves. The initiative is defined as the people. That is how we get bills passed in our states when our legislators fail to act. We should not vote yes on Issue 2. Issue 2 cites other things in there aside from monopolies, oligopolies, and cartels. It cites special interests, commercial business interests, commercial license. I've specifically gone into my computer and tried to find legal definitions for these terms. I'm not a lawyer, Chris is, but when I want to know a definition of something from a legal standpoint, that's the first thing I do. I go to the Ohio Revised Code, I go look for the legal definitions, and I can't find any legal definitions for commercial license, commercial interest. So therefore, in Section B2 of Issue 2, it leaves it up to the opinion of the ballot board to decide whether or not your citizens' initiative violates any of those statements in B1. And if it does, then it becomes the opinion of 3 of 5 people on our ballot board to make the decision on whether or not your amendment should become a 2-part question.
1 minute.
Is that my time?
1.
Okay. So anyway, like I said, we're here for the patients of Ohio. I will be voting yes on Issue 3. I did adamantly oppose it in the beginning, but having been out there, knowing how difficult it is to get something else to pass, I've decided that I will be changing my vote and I will be voting yes on Issue 3. And passage of Issue 3 also will not stop something from happening in the future. We can and we will continue to lobby for better laws. And if another amendment does make ballot next year, you can check yes in that box. Issue 3 will not stop anything else from going on to the ballot. Thank you.
And our final guest, who was just recently added on, his name is Morris Williams, and he represents Ohio citizens, but specifically the Southwest Ohio Hemp and Cannabis group. Morris Williams.
Don't let my 6 minutes start till I get over there. I smoked my first joint at 19. I didn't ask nobody. Half of the people who sold it took it, they didn't ask nobody either. And the folks who grew it, they didn't ask nobody either. Now, she said, and it's interesting, I worked under her for Ohio Rights Group getting signatures to put marijuana on the ballot. I've been waiting all these years for this to happen, and trust me, whether it's patients, crime, or anybody weeping, they are trying to get you to feel sympathetic while they write you out of your wealth. She She said she couldn't find out the definitions. Well, an oligopoly, if you put all the 10 groups together across the state, that is what it is defined. A monopoly is defined as that one group in Anderson Township who owns the property that would be the only ones who can legally grow and sell. They said, forget you. You just want to get high. You don't want to make no money. He asked you how old you were. You're old enough where you can have a scattered site grow. Your sororities, your fraternities, your bowling clubs, your family members at the family reunion can talk about scattered site grows where you can get into the wealth. Your property becomes valuable. The property around your property becomes valuable. You get to hire. You get to contract. You get to make chunk money at your age. I'm 65. I've been working all my life. Trust me. You want some chunk money. Salary money don't get it. If you don't have this sheet, I got some more that I'll give to you before you leave. This, you know, we're talking about we're in a democracy. If these properties get to become the only growers, they become the only growers forever. And we got to stop that. How dare they talk about you got to have a license at $100,000? That said that if all of us got together here, we don't have $100,000 just for the license. Then you got to pay for all the things to do the operations. They have built in a permanent tax inside the Constitution. 2 of them that will require another constitutional change to get that tax out. That's absolutely ludicrous. If you're a private owner, they say that you can grow 4 plants. But in a capitalist country, they say you cannot sell it, you cannot barter with it, you cannot trade with it for the things that you need. This is absolutely outrageous. I'm not a monopoly capitalist. I believe in democratizing capitalism. Democracy means the majority of people. But I'm also a Christian. So that means that we take care of the minority as well. This is what we ought to be about. They want to scare you into thinking that if you don't do it now, it won't happen. Like I said, I'm at the back door. Y'all are at the front door. Do not let them close the door on your ability to get wealth. Now, if you can't go into the dictionary and find cartel, I'll tell you what a cartel is. It's a bunch of crooks. And they're interested in this thing becoming legal, and they're the only growers. But the crooks in other states are hoping that you agree to it too. Because since it will be legal for you to smoke it, the crime mobs will be in here competing for your money. We will be bringing the crime that this police officer said he was against, because the market will be open. They won't have the product ready for the market. But the product is ready in all those other states. The people who have grown it already in Ohio cannot sell it, because it will be only legal for the one land. They put their property number inside the constitutional amendment, so their property will be of value and the only growers forever. All of you who understand, who have come from poor families, black or white or other, when property was handed down, we received liabilities. This will be the first time through a scattered site growth scenario across this state that people can hand their children property that's income producing, that can be handed down through their family, through their groups, through their friends forever. Don't let them trick you about a patient. I just got out of hip surgery. I shouldn't be here.
1 minute.
Vote for 2. No on 3. Yes on 2. Why? Because 2 says that even if the voters vote in a monopoly oligopoly, that the state will be required to take to the Ohio Supreme Court to defend it, to sue. It doesn't matter who's in the legislation. It is a constitutional law that will require that the state must sue against the monopoly. Don't let them go on Twitter, go on Facebook, tell everybody you know in Ohio, vote against issue 3, vote for issue 2, then begin to organize around those groups that are writing legislation that will meet your future. Let you become a grower. Let you become a distillery. You don't have the money to become the retail distilleries. You don't have the money to become the retail shops. They're closing you out because they think you just want to get high. There are 226 plants. If you're doing it for just medical purposes, you've got to have 226 plants so that you can serve those patients who need those particular needs. Scatter sites better.
I did post on the page to have some mobile device ready with you. And so how we're going to do these questions is, if you have a question, I want you to post who that question is for and what the question is in the most concise way possible on this event page. And the reason we're going to do it like that is because if you like somebody else's question, you can literally like that question, and we'll address those issues that people are most concerned about, what the audience wants to hear the answers to the most. So take a few minutes. Right now we're going to get this list populated and going. I'm probably going to start out with a few questions after about a minute here. But so again, if you just have a general question for anyone, you can just post that. We have some clarifications. Do you have a question about how this is working, or?
No, I have a question.
Okay, so how this is going to work is, if you have a question for the panel, we're asking that you post it to the wall of this event page. Does that make sense? Right. So we'll have a point at the end where we can address any questions that weren't able to be posted. But that's how I want to do this to begin. We have some clarifications.
Yes.
Yeah.
Would it be possible, I don't have Facebook right now.
Yeah.
Would it be possible to write down the question, bring it to you, and you post it out there?
No. Unfortunately, that's not going to be the most expedient way. We will have this portion at the end for any questions that weren't asked. But again, this is a popular vote style question and answer. Yes.
What is the event page?
Okay, so the event page.
SSDP presents Responsible Ohio.
Yeah, Responsible Ohio Community Forum.
Seth, is there a way for non-students to access the Wi-Fi?
Yes, UC, yes, is Wi-Fi. I appreciate you all working with me here. And this is also going to be a way to document the questions and have your feedback for the responses and the questions, because you'll be able to comment on these and you'll be able to share your opinion, and we're going to be able to assess what the public is thinking of the answers and of the questions themselves. And then again, at the end, if there are questions left over and we have time, we'll address those for sure. I want to make sure we cover this to the greatest extent possible. I do have a question that maybe can be answered just to start out with. This is for Chris. I got this handed to me at my door, and it says 10 growing facilities to start, and the state can add more to meet the demand. And so the reason I have a question is just because it has an asterisk, and it just says, and the state can add more to meet the demand. So I just wanted to hear your clarification on what exactly that means and what the process would look like.
Yeah, it's drafted into the
drafted into the amendment?
It's drafted into the amendment. You know, these are 10 facilities to start, and the amendment's pretty clear. It says that the commission can regulate these 10 facilities to the extent the 10 facilities aren't growing on the property, to the extent they're not following the rules or regulations, they get their licenses pulled. To the extent that 10 don't meet consumer demand metrics set by the commission, an independent third party, the commission can continue to add grow licenses year over year. So if in 2016, what would it be? If in 2019-20 there aren't enough of these facilities that are meeting consumer demand, commission adds another one. If in 21 they're not meeting demand, commission adds another one. And the commission can keep going ad infinitum. There could be a situation where there are 100 grow facilities. So, you know, I'm not sure what the folks to my right are talking about, that these are 10 rich people growing on, you know, 10 rich plots of land. That this is an open opportunity to come in and grow at the facility, to make, you know, to grow your own on the facility land. Think of it as an opportunity for craft grow. If you have a strain that you want to grow, you come in, you work with the facility there, you grow a craft batch, you sell it, you have the opportunity to, that's your intellectual property, and now you're a free agent. You have the opportunity to go to the main facility and grow in volume, or you can take your craft grow recipe, for lack of a better word, and shop it to any of the other 10 facilities. It's a plot of land where the grow must happen, not 10 rich guys who can only grow.
30-second comment. 30-second comment.
Yeah, 30 seconds.
If you read the language, it says in the 4 years that it would take for them to consider another grow, that the grow must be contiguous to the first land. So it can't be just any land. Read it for yourself.
Please take 20 seconds to explain that. All right, so I'm going to refresh this. Okay, so we have one question, several questions. Great. So, let us just begin with this one. How can you say RO is focused on care of medicinal patients when only 1 of 10 grow sites is required to grow medicinal quality marijuana? And within this one required medicinal grow site, the required space to produce CBD oils and the medicinal concentrates would be more than half of the allotted space.
Yeah, so there's a couple questions here. Let me see if I can unpack it. First of all, I'm not saying that there is not only 1 of 10 grow sites required to grow medicinal quality marijuana. That's wrong. All 10 of them can and certainly will grow medicinal quality marijuana for the medical market. I think what you may be confused on is that one of the facilities came out and said, for personal business and religious and family reasons, we will only grow medical at our facility. That's not to say that the others have said we won't grow. So I'm not sure where that one comes from. The required space to produce CBD oils and medical concentrate, I don't really understand that one. Again, I come back to the initial point, all 10 have the opportunity and the economic incentive and medical incentive to grow medicinal, pharma-grade medicine for Ohio's sickest patients.
Will issue 3 rectify all the wrong of the prison industrial complex? Seems like the same cycle of state violence will occur. What laws will be different for individuals caught selling illegally? So that brings up a good question. What are the punishments, or what might happen to people that is worse now with issue 3? This could go to both of you.
I'll try to be very brief. I don't want to be the guy that has to answer all the questions. Hopefully everyone else has questions for all these people. I mean, this is, there's 6 of us up here. But the answer is very simple. It's this decriminalizes the use of marijuana, the use of marijuana accessories, the use of marijuana for medicines. Remember, I spoke at the beginning about here are all the things that it does, and again, we didn't hear any refutation of any of that. This decriminalizes a whole host of things that are in the revised code. The things that it doesn't discuss, like illegal sale, are the exact same as what the revised code says now. So those penalties don't change. With one exception. And the only exception is if you knowingly sell to a minor, the amendment directs the General Assembly to come up with some enhanced penalties. Knowingly sell to a minor, you're going to have enhanced penalties, and it's up to the General Assembly for what goes on.
I believe the terminology was a child endangerment for selling to a minor.
Can I for a second?
Yeah, 30 seconds.
So enhanced penalties normally means a felony. One of my greatest concerns about the way that issue 3 is written currently is that 2 20-year-olds can be at a party, and any transfer of a joint from one of those 20-year-olds to the other can cause the first 20-year-old to have child endangerment or some enhanced penalty for passing the joint to their buddy at the party. So it's any transfer. That's the way it's written. It says transfer. So transfer is a passage of the joint from one person to the other. That's my 30 seconds. You can look it up. It's on.
Did you have a response?
Yeah, just one thing.
Okay, 30 seconds.
We've talked about rich and poor. One of the things that this will accomplish is that the weight of marijuana enforcement primarily falls on poor people. When this passes, we're going to quit arresting poor people for marijuana possession offenses.
Can I respond?
30 seconds.
That's absolutely not true. This does not fully decriminalize. This doesn't take away all of the penalties. You go over a certain amount, and you're subject to the old Ohio revised code. That's a fact. People will get arrested. If you're growing without a license, you're going to get arrested. People will still go to jail under issue 3. It's getting a slight bit of leeway. That's it. Is that enough to change our entire state constitution? I argue that it's not.
Response.
We're going to have Howard respond to that, and we're going to move on to the next question.
Well, I think it's more than a slight bit. Thank you.
Fair enough. All right, next question. This is for John Sheil. Hypothetically, let's say marijuana gets legalized and creates what many are calling a monopoly. After marijuana is legalized for some time, we realize that issue 3 isn't working. Who or what is to say we can't further amend how marijuana is sold and distributed after its legalization? Furthermore, what assurance do I have as a voter that another legalization issue will be in next year's ballot? It's for John.
Okay, so I'm trying to read along here too. Let's say marijuana gets legalized and creates what many are calling a monopoly. After marijuana is legalized for some time, we realize that issue 3 isn't working. Who or what is to say that we can't further amend how marijuana is sold and distributed after its legalization? So I'll answer that one first. So the people that are going to fight any amendment to the Constitution are the people who are handed all of the money and the power from this current issue 3. Those folks have a vested interest in protecting their economic business model. If they're making millions of dollars on their own business plan, they're not going to let you very easily come in and change and all of a sudden reduce the barriers to entry and eliminate their oligopoly, to use a technical term. So that's who will be against it. Furthermore, what assurance do I have as a voter that another legalization issue will be on next year's ballot? Well, I will tell you that there are some folks here that can tell you they've been working very hard on this. Ohioans to End Prohibition has ballot language approval. They have 200,000 gathered signatures. That's according to Shri, who is president of the organization. Well, that's fine, but the president of the organization has been posting this information. I'm not here to advocate for any one particular group. Okay, there are 7. There are even investors in the Responsible Ohio plan who have come out and said that if issue 3 fails, they will be behind another measure to go forward. So it's not going to end just because we don't pass issue 3. There are going to be plenty of people, and there already are plenty of people working to change this law. Now, with issue 3, we've made it a statewide debate. We have people all over the state who are talking in forums just like this about how we move forward. I've got a lot of folks who are very interested in legalization. I can assure you that another one will be on the ballot.
Chris, you have a minute to respond to that.
Well, guys, opposition is going to be here for the next one too. I mean, it's sort of disingenuous to suggest, oh my gosh, next year if we do a new one, everyone will line up and throw rose petals at us. We'll have the same prohibitionists that don't want this to happen. We'll have the same state legislature come forward and say, this shouldn't change. When they talk about, they'll have a vested interest in keeping the status quo, I sort of chuckle, like, yeah, look how many, I'm dealing with it. Look how many people have a vested interest in maintaining the status quo. There are tons of people that make money off the status quo of criminalization, including all of those prohibitionist folks that get funding to make sure that marijuana legalization doesn't happen. I mean, to suggest that next year's another year, guys, just hold off for next year. We'll have $20 million to be able to spend on this new panacea. That just hold on, it'll be here next year. When the last time I looked at the PAC report, they had negative $6,000. I mean, if it were up to me, if I were the Ohio Rights Group, or I'm sorry, OTEP, I would put all my money into the PAC report and say, I've got it, here it is.
15 seconds, Bob.
My group called the Southwest Ohio Hemp and Cannabis Group, and a couple of groups and others across the state. We've already looked at the other 20-something states. We believe that Oregon has the best. We're taking the best out of Oregon legislation, the best out of Ohio rights legislation. We're putting it together. We're now talking to potential funders to talk about funding that effort. And those of you who were not involved in the process last time will be involved in the process this time. We'll get this done for us.
All right, next question. For somebody to answer on each side, what is the implication of yes on 2 and yes on 3? I think either John or Aaron, please.
All right, so if I'm understanding the question correctly, if both pass, well, if issue 2 passes, that will be immediately affect the citizen initiative process. So they will have presumably a little tussle in court, and people's feelings will get hurt, and we'll see what happens after that if it passes. We'd like to avoid that, so we don't have to waste the state's time dealing with this type of behavior.
I was going to say, by voting no on 2 and yes on 3, we also avoid the issue.
Not surprisingly, Aaron and I disagree on this, but only to a small extent. I mean, the one part that Aaron and I do agree on is this will end up in court. If issue 2 passes with less yes votes than issue 3, the Constitution says, to the extent there's a conflict, the one that gets more yes votes wins. But we've had our legal teams, a million legal teams, look at this, and if you actually look at what issue 2 does, it prevents the monopoly for the sale, distribution, and use of marijuana. Well, guess what? To the extent that this is a monopoly, it certainly isn't a monopoly for the sale of marijuana. I mean, we had John up there saying, hey, the licenses to get into the retail are too expensive. It's not a monopoly for sale. It's not a monopoly for distribution. There's a provision in the constitutional amendment that allows everybody to distribute. So, and it's certainly not a monopoly for the use of marijuana. I mean, the amendment says anybody over 21 can use. So,
But it is for the production.
No, it's not. It's not, actually. That's what the title says. But if you look at issue 2, it says a monopoly for the sale, distribution, or other use of marijuana.
So, given that there are restrictions on growth facilities. This question has 5 people engaged. So do you believe that that issue 3 will raise the cost of marijuana because of constraints on who can grow? And 2, if the cost of marijuana rises, do you believe that criminals will continue to profit by selling less expensive marijuana?
Gosh, I'm really trying to not be the guy that answers the questions. I hate listening to my own voice, so I assume you hate it just as much. Do you believe that on the first question, there's a basic economic principle in play. The 10 of these folks have to compete with each other. If they don't, they're subject to the Sherman and Clayton Antitrust Act and the Valentine Antitrust Act, which is an Ohio analog. But more fundamentally, they have to compete with an existing black market. So to the extent these guys price their product above where the black market is, people are going to flow to the black market and not buy from these retailers, right? I mean, that's simple supply and demand. So not only do these 10 have to compete with each other on price, quality, and quantity, they have to compete with the black market. That black market, to the extent you think this is a monopoly, that black market acts as an absolute hedge to keep the cost low, or these guys go out of business and get their license pulled.
Rebuttal. Can you bring that back down? Says, do you believe that 3 will raise the cost of marijuana because of restraints? Yes. In Colorado, because they have a 36% tax, the cost went up so high that in the documentary that was just on TV, they're saying that black market is boom, number 1. If cost of marijuana rise, do you believe criminals will continue to profit by selling less expensive marijuana? Absolutely. And Hemp, Ohio, right now, best marijuana, $17 to $20 a gram. In Colorado, legally, $30 a gram. You need to read the data, but there's a documentary that a legitimate group did on TV the other day, I forgot, was that 60 Minutes or one of those kind of groups. They laid that out. It will be more expensive.
15-second response. 15 seconds.
Yeah, just a note on what we saw in Minnesota with the prices so astronomically high that patients can't afford medicine. It's yet another no-brainer that a monopoly approach to this will be a constraint. If something happens at one of these facilities, you're wiping out 1/10 of the product for the entire state. Come on.
All right, we're gonna go on to a question from Howard Rahtz. Are you a fan of Colorado laws? Why not support laws that are similar?
In support of Colorado's legalization laws. Why not support laws that are similar?
I'm not all that familiar with them. To me, the issue is, and maybe it's just my simple mind, it's prohibition, less of a bird in the hand, beats one in the bush. And you know, there's differences here, but if we go ahead and legalize this, and then as we go, in Colorado, it's a classic case. Your friend brought up, you know, their pricing strategy and tax strategy has caused some black market, although I think that's really been overblown. $700 in the legal marijuana market, and people are saying there's still a big black market. Well, how much of a market is it? I just can't. I think most of their black market is people from Kansas and Nebraska going in, buying marijuana and taking it home. And, you know, we get that same off-state stuff. And my thing about the black market going away, it will go away. Just like the alcohol black market went away after alcohol prohibition.
Yeah, they think.
Lottery didn't go away. The legal lottery still going.
30-second response. Here.
The black market isn't going to go away. It's very realistic. When you mandate the tax structure that issue 3 mandates, you're increasing the cost exponentially for these people. It's just a massive upcharge because of this tax. People don't want to pay those taxes. They don't want to have to pay up and beyond what they normally pay in the black market today. This will take a long time to ever really realistically compete with the black market pricing, and then you're going to be sacrificing quality. In a free market, we'd be seeing prices lower That won't happen.
If the doctor says no, who do you go to?
Yeah, that brings up a personal question I have. This one's for Amy. What is your opinion about the medical aspect of this bill? Is it enough? Is a list of diagnosed diseases enough for all medical patients when you can only get medical marijuana from a specific guy?
Well, what it will do, I mean, everybody complains that there's no patient protections. There's no patient protections now. Policy at work is going to be policy at work. I mean, if it's written into their policy that you have to provide a negative drug screen, doesn't matter what state you're in. You fail the drug screen, you're probably going to lose your job. That is just an employer policy. Employers get a kickback for running a drug-free workplace. I am a small business, as I said. I can get a kickback from workers' compensation if I run a drug-free workplace. If I drug test all my employees, I get a kickback. My workers' comp is cheaper. And there will be
fair or enough to actually guarantee medical.
I think that right now, I think the list is fair, and I think it definitely opens the door. And everybody, as far as medical goes, you need to check out ICI, and the International Cannabis Institute. It will be a groundbreaking research on the Lincoln County drug site, $24 million facility that will be dedicated to taking care of the patients of Ohio. ICI, check it out.
30-second response for Barry.
Yeah, please do check out ICI. Note that it took reporters going to the city to discuss their business plans, putting some $24 million facility there. Before these officials from ICI even made mention to the city officials about what they were doing. This is yet another shell group. This is nothing more than an observatory, not some grandiose laboratory research facility. So let's be a little more realistic about what ICI is pretending to be. So check out ICI and just check out the time frames when they were created and who they are.
Alright, I'm going to go into this question. It has 9 people engaging with it, so why is this being voted on as an amendment to the Ohio Constitution and not some other referendum as done in other states like Colorado? Seems a little excessive to embed such a minor issue into a state constitution. Go for anyone.
Well, you know that Colorado's wasn't amended, right? It was an amendment to the Colorado Constitution. Secondly, the answer to the question is, harkens back to my earlier remarks, which is, we've been trying to do this at the General Assembly for 20 years. The General Assembly's not going to do this. So thankfully, we have a citizen-based initiative that we can go do it ourselves, and that's what we've done.
Anybody have 15 seconds?
Sure. I don't believe that just because we had past results with previous elected officials that we're going to have the same results moving forward. I do believe that there is a tipping point coming in this country, and I do believe that at the federal level, we will be changing the dialogue. I don't believe that we need to put all of Ohio's marijuana profits in the hands of 10 investors, and I don't believe this is the right way to go forward.
That's a good transition into our next question, which is, even if there are some negatives to issue 3, don't the positives outweigh the negatives? Perfect initiatives never come along, which is why there is oftentimes a gridlock in America. Aren't the thousands of people who may potentially have a lot of their life ruined every year enough of a reason to vote yes? Or the cancer patients who cannot wait another year? How is saying no to issue 3 better than prohibition?
Okay, the positives here do not outweigh the negatives. The small amount of leeway that it's giving on possession charges and whatnot is very small. It's a small amount of freedom that they're granting, with a massive consequence. So let's talk about what we complain about on a day-to-day basis. Well, it's a bummer that we have to smoke pot and hide it. That's one complaint on a daily basis. What's the other? Oh, the economy sucks. We don't have opportunity. We don't have jobs. We don't have this. And we've had massive promises from the casino amendment of 2009 for jobs in a monopoly style, those didn't happen as much as they promised. So when you're not complaining about marijuana, you're going to be complaining about the economy. I bet you. And I bet you'll be kicking yourself if you vote this in, and you're left out of economic opportunities.
30-second response.
Sure. You know, we started at the very beginning. It seems almost simplistic at this point to make the argument that if you pass issue 3, no one will benefit but 10 people. I think that that's actually losing traction. I don't think anyone believes that. And if you look at the amendment, you will see that this is a wide open industry. Don't take my word for it. Listen to the folks over here. Listen to the folks in your Facebook networks or Twitter networks or whatever. You want to be a retailer. Remember John was saying earlier on, by golly, the manufacturing and processing licenses are too expensive for us. By golly, the retail licenses are too expensive. We should have lower license fees. Well, that's an explicit reminder that, oh yeah, everybody can be involved in this industry. There will be 35,000 jobs. And to his point about, well gosh, you know, we're setting the license fee too high. You're setting a retail license fee at $10,000. I hope that everybody understands that in Florida, for the grow facilities there, the state set that show of liquidity at $500,000. In New York, for the 5 grow facilities that they licensed, they set it at $1 million. In Illinois, the 21 licenses, they set it at $250,000. This is rated money.
Yeah, sure. 20 seconds.
The issue is that we want economic inclusion. I want economic inclusion. I really can't say we because I don't represent anybody other than myself. I want all of you to be included in the new marijuana market, okay? $50,000 isn't in line with Colorado. Colorado started with 176 licenses for both retail and growth. Now the industry has grown. They have 4,000 licenses. Even if we were talking about 50 available licenses at $1,000 or $5,000 or even $10,000 to grow, we'd be talking about a much broader, much more inclusive plan. This is 10 licenses, $50,000, if they ever let you add to them.
This question is for Amy. Why did you neglect to mention the action qualifier in issue 2? That are not otherwise available to other similarly situated persons or non-public entities. Is that specific enough for you to answer?
Actually, no. But, I mean, I guess I kind of get where you're going with that, but I looked up the definitions and, you know, I could break it down. I can look up the definition of commercial, I can look up the definition of license. When you read the definition of license, and I can't quote it word for word and I do not have it written down, but basically what it says is it's asking for permission to sell something that otherwise would be illegal. So when you add that to the word commercial, which typically equals business, I guess my big issue with issue 2 is it will affect other initiatives in the future, no matter what it is. It could be some form of civil rights, it could be women's rights, it could be wage and labor, and it could be another marijuana legalization amendment. So that's where I stand, I guess. I hope I answered the question.
30-second rebuttal.
The only thing that you need to worry about if you're using our citizen initiative process to change our Constitution, if issue 2 passes, the only thing you need to worry about is if you're trying to institute a monopoly, oligopoly, or cartel, or confer special tax interests that aren't equally available for similarly situated people. So that's all you need to worry about with issue 2. Don't try and do what they're doing, which we're all obviously here about, and you won't have a problem. It's that simple.
Unfortunately, it's not that simple. What Amy was getting to is because of this language, let me give you an example, otherwise innocuous example. There is a provision that was put into the Constitution that deals with mechanics and carpenter liens. Is it carpenter liens? Mechanics liens. And it says that essentially mechanics who get stiffed by the folks that are putting their cars together get to jump in line and be the first people to get paid when they finally get their stiff. Well, that creates a commercial interest that's available to mechanics that isn't available to other folks. It's not available to attorneys who got stiff and have to wait in line to get their money. It's not available. Why are mechanics differently situated than attorneys? They both have they both are standing in line. They both are standing in line. What about war? Well,
so we'll just continue with a question that I myself wanted to know more about is, surely the RO considered hemp while writing the amendment. Why did it choose not to include hemp in its final versions?
That came out of a specific discussion with folks in the hemp industry, and what they said as a number of groups were getting together to put marijuana on the ballot was stay away from hemp. We are doing hemp with the legislature. We don't want you essentially poisoning our hemp process in the legislature with your marijuana amendment. And we took them at their word and did what they told us to do. That's it.
So I had asked that question to Ian James, the executive director, when he was at a panel in Lorraine, and his response was very similar, that they had discussed this matter with others in the hemp industry. So taking that as what it is, you guys spoke to out-of-state interests, and they said, no, don't do that. Don't give that to Ohio yet. We're working on that. And you listened. That's pretty much treasonous against your own people. This is something that should be available for folks. But you're stating that out-of-state interests told you that, no, don't do it. And you listen. Just let that sink in. So bad for me.
You can respond to that.
Yeah, except for the fact that it was a woman from Ohio that said this.
You said people, that's just one person. How many others did you say?
A woman from Ohio.
Well, why didn't you say you talked to a woman in Ohio about it? Now it's a woman in Ohio, but before it was people.
I also heard her actually.
When you said people, and
We're going to move on from that question.
but you're citing multiple.
Thank you. For the two attorneys on the panel, I support marijuana legalization, but I'm skeptical of responsible Ohio law. Based on your understanding of current Ohio Supreme Court politics, what do you believe the outcome would be if both issues 2 and 3 were to pass? We'll start with John.
I did answer that on the panel. I'm staring at my phone here trying to keep up with questions as I get tagged and as I get. But I think the short answer, and I think we can both agree, is that if both pass, there will eventually be litigation. There will be, we can talk about, the fact is, the Ohio legislature seems to believe, and a lot of lawyers seem to believe, that whoever gets the most votes will win. But there's some competing language in there, because issue 2 is supposed to take effect right away, whereas issue 3 has a time period of about 30 days afterwards. So, short answer, it's going to be litigated. And the only people who win in that are lawyers. So.
Anything you'd like to add?
No, I agree.
Okay. If I vote yes on 3, will that prevent a poorly trained law enforcement tactical team from raiding my house for having a plan? Let's say that this person had several plans, like 8 instead of 4. Will prevent me from being harassed on the highway by police. Let's say I have a constitutional right to travel highways without being harassed. Microaggressions by police turned into macro ones, right? So I guess I would go to Howard.
There's no guarantee what's going to happen. There's 12,000 police departments across this country that are locally managed. I'm not going to stand here and try to defend everything that happens, and no guarantees in this stuff. The only guarantee we have is if we feel like something unjust has happened, we need to complain loudly, and complain chronically. Yeah, there you go.
You guys can pull the next question for me. I have one of my own. It's a little bit concerning to me. So there's the 15% tax on all gross revenue. And number one, in terms of where that money is going, 55% shall be used for public safety and health, including police, fire, and emergency medical services, road and bridge repair, and other infrastructure improvements. 2, 30% to the strong fund, which is used for public safety and health, including law enforcement, economic development, road and bridge repair, and other infrastructure improvements. And number 3, 15% to the reasonable and necessary cost of operating the commission. B, funding for the Marijuana Innovation and Business Incubator. C, the extent the commission so selects the reasonable and necessary operating costs for the not-for-profit medical marijuana dispensary. And D, mental health and addiction prevention and treatment programs and services. And the final one is E, to the extent the commission so selects a program to fund, to provide low-cost medical marijuana to qualifying patients. So my question is, when we're at the height of a heroin epidemic, and we understand the consequences that addiction and substance abuse has, why is it mental health, why is the health service one of the first things on our list? Why do police need more money twice? And one of our last considerations is for people, because I would assume that this would reduce crime. I would hope that legalization does reduce crime. I guess, so why isn't there more of an emphasis on mental health, substance abuse prevention, and addiction treatment?
I love the question. It's an incredibly thoughtful and well-reasoned question. I think you look at this in the aggregate, and what's happening is a multiple trickle-down effect. So, aggregate the top two, the 55% plus the 30%. 55% is going to the localities, 30% is going to the counties. Counties do different things than localities, so that's why you hear, sort of doubling up of police and fire in the localities and in the counties. You hear about economic development initiatives in the counties because that's where generally economic development initiatives are funded. And then in both, you have sort of road and bridge repair and infrastructure improvement and so on. What that does, by design, is create a number of virtuous economic cycles that are written right into the amendment. Because road and bridge repair and infrastructure improvement, economic development allows, creates a 3-to-1 return on money you put in. To your response specifically, your question specifically, when you move that money into those very, very challenged areas of county and city budgets, you free up significant resources to do exactly what you suggest we should do, and I agree.
Any response to that question?
I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted by people talking to me directly on Facebook about these questions.
Okay.
That's why I don't know.
Alright, so how is the issue of racial targeting not enough to vote yes? These people are oftentimes labeled felons for the rest of their life, which keeps them from government aid for schools, keeps them from getting jobs, and keeps them from being able to vote. Every year the number of these individuals increases. Is it fair to increase this number for 1 or more years to come by voting no? So in other words, is voting no justifiable for the people who are going to face jail time in the next year?
Well, I'd love to be able to have an answer. Voting no on issue 3 means that law enforcement will fall as as I stated before, voting yes on issue 3 doesn't stop arrests. And in fact, we have situations where we have an enhanced penalty. So the 2 college students passing a joint are subject to an enhanced penalty of child endangerment. So I would love it if we could just tomorrow stop the madness. That'd be great. But we can't play this game of, we'll give you this freedom and we'll take this freedom. We'll give you this and repealing of some prohibition here, but we'll take your economic opportunity. So I don't play those games of public policy that we're saying, well, it would help these people, but it doesn't help them. And it's still illegal at the federal level, so you're still going to see cases in that aspect. So it's not something that's going to do anything worse by voting no. It will be the same. But as we're pressing forward and law enforcement is treating things a little differently, and if you have conversations with them, they'll talk to you honestly about how they don't like to get into people's business when it comes to marijuana because they have more pressing things.
Zach, can you score some of the questions?
Yeah. Yeah, we do have a rebuttal for that if anyone would like one. So we have a question about projected tax revenue for the citizens. Do we have numbers for that? It says, could you please give a clear assessment of what the projected profit revenue will be per year for each individual grow site, and what the projected tax revenue for citizens will be for the Ohio County that the grow site is located?
I think, Adam, you should know this. A clear assessment was that we project based on the economic modeling, and we had to do economic modeling. This goes back to sort of the thread of the conversation we were having earlier, where it was like, oh my gosh, you've set the tax revenue, or you've set the tax rate too high, and now nobody's going to be able to get pot for under black market prices. We already kind of discussed why that doesn't make sense from an economic perspective, but from a modeling perspective, we actually set the tax rate at an effective rate of, what is it, 22%? What's the effective rate? 22%, and modeled against the current price, the current black market price of weed. So as we were optimizing the model to take into account the 22% effective tax rate, we were still within the margin where the black market plays based on priceofweed.com. So and then the other answer is, based on what we see as being a $2.6 billion consumer market, after all the taxes, you end up with $554 million, and that includes state sales tax over the 22% effective tax rate. Excess tax rate.
Can I just...
You're going to response to that.
So the bottom line is, a market functions, they can do all the modeling that they want, but if there are folks at home who refuse to participate, then it sort of blows the model out of the water. Yes, there are going to be a lot of people who purchase through their business plan, but there are going to be plenty of people who grow at home and don't raise their hands and hand up the $50 to have possible inspection of their current grow sites. There's plenty of people who grow now, who sell, and all of their supply chain, all of that's going to remain in place. So it really doesn't change the fact that people are growing marijuana and selling it to each other and transferring it. Sure, it might make it cheaper to find at a retail store, but it doesn't change the underlying facts of people who are already doing it. So it remains to be seen what tax revenue is generated. It remains to be seen who is going to actually participate in the retail market. So there's really not any way to tell, despite all the best guesses that they have.
All right. Does anybody have a burning question that they haven't heard?
What qualified these 10 license holders? They interviewed to work for these people. Serious concerns on how they're going to do this.
Say that what qualifies the license holders? Yeah, the amendment sets forth, about a 300-word explanation of what you have to do to even make a provisional license application, and then the commission sets out rules and regulations that you must be able to follow before you can get even a provisional application. And then you're required on a year-over-year basis to follow every rule and every regulation set forth by the General Assembly, who's no fan of this, and by the Commission, who will presumably be no fan of this, to make sure that you are meeting every single rule and regulation. And if you don't, you get your license pulled. That's all in the
So it's not regulated by law,
it will be regulated by a commission who stands apart from any of these facilities.
Is there any need for response to that? All right, do you want to make a closing statement, John?
Just thank you all for being here, and thanks for my fellow panelists. I think there's been a really good debate here, and I'm willing to participate in any further follow-up questions. I've been answering some of these things. I'm obviously on Facebook. You can talk to me if you have questions about my opinion, but again, I don't represent anyone other than myself. My opinions do echo those of the Ohio State Bar Association. I do have serious concerns. I do represent folks who have been busted for weed and busted for growing, and I can tell you what their thoughts are confidentially, but I don't represent anyone who has any vested interest in this other than I do want good public policy, and I thank you all for being a part of what's essentially creating good public policy in the debate. So thanks very much, and thanks to all the panelists. I do appreciate it.
Thank you so much, John. Another burning question that hasn't been answered? We're going to do two more. The first one, two.
Since that mentioned that issue 3 will reduce arrest for marijuana, why isn't it a fresh start that should be included in the issue 3? Why is it not that?
Right, so why is the fresh start not been addressed, which is important for people who are being arrested for it?
Absolutely. In a perfect world, it would be. The Ohio Ballot Board requires everything to be a single subject that ends up in an initiated statute or a constitutional amendment. So the Fresh Start Act, since it deals with changing criminal law, is different than changing marijuana laws, legalizing marijuana or whatever. We were concerned, quite frankly, on the front end that the ballot board would play games with us in terms of legalizing medical and recreational. There was a concern that would be seen as a two-subject and they'd split it. We had every reason to believe that when you talk about changing the criminal code and changing and legalizing marijuana, they'd be split. So what we've done is we've gone out. You know the stats. We've got 290-some thousand signatures, and on November 4th, we're going to present those to the legislature and force the legislature to make a choice.
Seems as if the only one left over there. Aaron, do you have anything to say about that?
I can throw a little perspective.
Go for it.
Just on the note of, that's their explanation for it, and, that very well may be so, but to the rest of us, it appears that it's simply just bait. Approve our monopoly today, and we'll set you free tomorrow. We promise. And we keep hearing promises of jobs and taxes. We're not going to arrest you, but these are promises. These are mandates, and funding, all of these other things need to be mandates in public policy. We should not accept promises, because we know what happens when we do.
Yeah, the Fresh Start Act was written by Doug Berman. It wasn't written by us. Doug Berman is a scholar at the Ohio State Law School who's above reproach. Doug Berman is the one spearheading this with money behind us. We've already gotten signatures. Yeah, you better believe Doug Berman's not going to let this drop. You better believe that the social justice community is not going to let this stop. So, I view that as sort of a simplistic way to look at a much more complex problem.
Thank you. All right. Last question from the audience.
So that those small boutique growers can actually come in
Yeah.
This has to do with growing plots within the...
That's Jasmine, right? Are you Jasmine? Hi, Jasmine. Good to see you again. Yeah, I mean, what we're talking about, what we've been talking about is a commercially reasonable rent structure. The whole concept is, in a sense, to outsource your R&D. Your folks in who have the knack, who have the history, who have the experience of having done this. There will be, like I told the folks last night, there will be, facilities out in the various plots. Some of the groups have said, think of this as a Easton-like mall where there will be a bunch of different buildings, and one building will be the craft grow, one building will be the ICI, which is actually what the folks in Lincoln County have been talking about, is having a craft grow facility, having a main facility, having a ICI, the International Cannabinoid Institute. There are versions of this that are going around. The reason we haven't touted this, the reason we haven't pushed it out there, is because of the inevitable argument that, oh my gosh, you're just promising more things. So we haven't made a big deal of it, but absolutely after this, and like I said last night, Jasmine, we look forward to the time to publicize that.
Bottle for me. 30 seconds.
So he mentions the word craft, artisanal. I want to focus on the word craft because it's a very catchy term right now. I worked in the craft beer industry as a distributor for about 4 years. Stating that the landowner leasing space out to other people is somehow craft would be like Budweiser saying, hey, we'll let you brew in a few tanks, but you have to do it at Budweiser. So just the ridiculousness of the idea, and people who are in the craft beer industry or fans of craft beer view the word craft as meaning freedom, independence, and ingenuity on your own, not under the mastery of someone else.
All right. I think it is about time to wrap it up. I do really, really thoroughly appreciate every single person who's participated in this from all perspectives. I do want to give each panelist, we'll give everybody over here 30 seconds. We'll give Aaron a minute, just due to the balance of things right now. I think that should be fair. So we'll just hear everybody's closing arguments. Again, thank you so much for being here. There's going to be a video recap and another full video of this whole thing. We're going to try to push this out to Ohio as a whole so that people are more educated on the issues. There's also 2 really fantastic sites that kind of cover all these issues as well that I'll post to the page. Again, thank you so much for being here. Let's hear from Chris Stout one more time.
I'm not going to use my words for this 30 seconds. I'm going to use Keith Stroop's words. Keith Stroop is the National Normal's General Counsel and one of its founders. And he wrote to the national legalization community yesterday, and I'm going to read the quote that he wrote. Quote, "Issue 3 in Ohio should be endorsed by all who favor legalization, even with its imperfections. As the Normal Board of Directors concluded when we endorsed the Ohio proposal, unless the current proposal in Ohio is approved, it will likely be 5 years or more, perhaps far longer, before marijuana will be legalized. Under their current law, roughly 12,000 Ohioans are arrested on marijuana charges each year. Does anyone really believe we should sit by waiting for a more acceptable version of legalization to magically appear while another 60,000 to 100,000 smokers are arrested in Ohio?" There's more, but you get the gist.
Criminal justice reform in this country begins with ending the war on drugs. The first and most important step in that is legalizing marijuana. We have the opportunity to do that regardless of the imperfections. I think we need to grab it and hold on to it with all we can.
Ohio's patients need their medication now. They cannot wait any longer. Issue 3 is here now, and this is our chance to open the doors and get things started. We cannot guarantee there will be anything next year.
I'd like to point out that the quote from Keith's group has caused a lot of controversy within Normal itself. Naturally, Normal is at odds with obviously, I would like you to vote no on issue 3, and yes on 2. But as long as you're making a conscientious decision, that's right by me. So I won't take up any more of your time. I appreciate you coming out, and for those who have lasted to the very end. Thank you. Well, thank you all so much. Again, we're UC Students for Central Drug Policy. Let me know. My name is Zeph if you want to know more about our group. Thank you so much for the time. And feel free to keep posting under the board with more comments and questions about the board.